Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Neil Woodrow. Here are today's top stories. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he can't give concrete dates for lockdown lifting as the infection and hospitalisation rates are still very high. Community transmission of the South African variant of COVID-19 is detected and 80,000 residents in 8 regions are offered door-to-door virus tests. The UK government condemns the military coup in Burma and calls for the release of Aung San Suu Kyi. An expert says the motive of the coup is unclear. Prime Minister Boris Johnson defended his decision not to ease restrictions. While infection and hospitalisation rates are falling, they are still at too high a level, he said.
High level, and so the risk is if you take your foot off the throat of the beast, as it were, if you allow things to get out of control again, then you could, alas, see the disease spreading again fast before we've got enough vaccines into people's arms.
Johnson is expected to release a plan for easing the lockdown at the end of February. The UK government has found cases of the South African coronavirus variant passes within the community. People in some regions are facing mass testing to try to contain it. 11 people in different regions are positive for the variant, but they don't have any links to people who recently travelled. The government is encouraging residents over 16 years old in 8 postcodes to have a test. They will be visited and requested to take a PCR test, whether they have symptoms or not. Among the 8 postcodes, 3 in London, 2 in the South East, 1 in the West Midlands, East of England and the North West. In total, Public Health England has identified 105 cases of the South African variant. England's Health Service says it has offered the COVID-19 vaccine to residents at every care home. Prime Minister Boris Johnson calls this a crucial milestone. NTD's Trevor Piper has more.
How are you feeling?
England has more than 10,000 care homes with older residents. In the span of 8 weeks, they were all offered vaccines and received them.
Today's a really special day, really. We've offered the vaccine to all of our care homes in England, which is a major achievement.
Residents at the Lillian Faithful House care home in Cheltenham say they are delighted to receive vaccinations.
Yeah, delighted. I've had it. You feel totally different because you feel that you're getting somewhere and you're getting on the way to being free.
Of course. I mean, it's whether it works out or not, it's another thing, but it's worth a try.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's confident the UK has enough supply of vaccines.
We must make sure that we go forward with the second jab for everybody as well. A few have already had the second jab, as you know, but everybody will get one within 12 weeks of their first jab. And
the UK has given a first dose to 9 million people. England's National Health Service says a small number of care homes delayed their vaccinations because of a local outbreak. Trevor Piper, NTD News, London.
The Isle of Man has become the first region in the UK to lift COVID-19 restrictions, but the borders are still closed to outsiders. Schools and businesses can reopen and people can leave their homes and enjoy their normal life. Importantly, people don't need to wear face coverings or keep social distance anymore. The island has not had any unexplained community cases of the virus for 20 days. Chief Minister Howard Quayle told Sky News they have had no COVID from mid-June to early January, and when they found new cases in January, they shut down the island to eradicate. The pandemic is impacting our daily lives and how we handle death. Funeral workers in East London told NTD's Jane Werrell what it's been like to support those who've lost their loved ones.
Funeral workers are often not recognised as being on the front lines of the pandemic.
In times where we have this national pandemic, it has been exhausting.
This company in London say their workload has been double than normal.
This second wave, these last few months, have seemed worse than this time last year, like March last year. There are also cases of perfectly fit people catching COVID and not coping, which I don't think we saw here in that first wave.
Not long after we arrived, a Ugandan family mourning their loved one. They agreed we could film as they left.
They looked at it that their mother would feel it's important that the story is told. You know, the mere fact that her life was cut short through COVID, this is something to be taken seriously.
He said they treat every case as if it's COVID-related, while ensuring families pay their respects to the deceased within the guidelines, catering for different cultures and traditions.
But it's so important to sort of keep our normal practice going, that is, the ritual washings for Hindu and Sikh families.
Under government guidance, funerals attendance is kept to 30. They work long hours supporting families through the grieving process.
Our profession has always sort of been in the background of society, never really acknowledged until it's needed. But that's just the nature of the profession itself, it's the nature of the job, which we understand.
Suddenly a war comes along and, I don't want to get hurt and let's all run away and let's all hide. Well, that's not the way it works. And the funeral trade's like that.
They'll carry on their roles so those who are lost are not forgotten. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
After just 1 month of post-Brexit trading, British logistics expert John Swallow sees exports dive, prices rise and more overload in general. NTD's Trevor Piper has more.
British exporters now need to complete customs and safety declarations, health checks and rules of origin details to trade with the EU.
You know, people built their businesses around that free-flowing, channel. And so just to put it up overnight is really going to hurt some businesses.
Companies are importing more. They are pushing up prices to persuade EU drivers to come to Britain. It's not clear if EU logistics operators will even ship to the UK if there are additional costs and delays. Swallow foresees a remapping in the near future.
We are rebuilding supply chains already. You're seeing these boats come from Rosslare. You're probably, there's some of the unaccompanied hauliers already in advance of this, of increasing their fleet of trailers. So you're going to see a big shift away from Dover, I think.
The remapping could bring some long-term advantages. Prime Minister Johnson argues that a more nimble UK would be able to trade globally if it cast off the shackles of an overly bureaucratic EU. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
The Prime Minister condemns the military coup in Burma. The motive of the coup is still uncertain. Earl Rhodes has more.
Burma's military seized power on Monday in a coup against the democratically elected government of Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. Burma is also known as Myanmar. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he condemned the coup. He said Aung San Suu Kyi and other civilian leaders must be freed. The army said it carried out the detentions in response to election fraud.
The issue is that for the military, they don't need to win elections in order to maintain their power. The system that we've had in Burma since for the last sort of 10 years or so has been one which has been designed by the military.
Roberts said the military introduced reforms and they set up the system to preserve their political and economic power. It's unclear the motive of this coup, which seems not to benefit the military institution.
So it does seem that this is a personal power play by the head of the military, Min Aung Hlaing. He was due to retire in the summer, and so it does seem that this is a move by him to maintain his position.
Roberts said it's vital for the international community to act strongly to show the military they will not get away with this military coup. There has been a lot of investment from the West since Burma elected Suu Kyi in 2015.
So we need to see countries targeting the economic interests of the military. We need to see targeted sanctions on banning business with military-owned and controlled companies.
She said the international community should try to build an arms embargo against Burma as well. The UK government has issued a statement condemning the state of emergency imposed by the Myanmar military. Earl Rhodes, NTD News, London.
Riot police broke up protests across Russia in support of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Over 5,000 people were detained. NTD's Joy Dogood has the details.
People braved the bitter cold on Sunday to demand authorities set Navalny free. In Moscow, police reportedly used tasers and batons against protesters. They sealed off streets near the Kremlin, closed metro stations and deployed hundreds of riot police. For many, Navalny's imprisonment has triggered demand for civil rights across the board.
The situation with human rights, the lawlessness that is happening here, unjust decisions, there are many reasons, including personal ones.
I want to live in a legal state where everyone is equal before the law, where there is free media. Therefore, I couldn't stay at home and not come here.
UK Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said in a tweet, the UK condemns the Russian authorities' indiscriminate and arbitrary arrest of peaceful protesters and journalists. Navalny is accused of parole violations, which he says are trumped up. A court is due to sit on Tuesday to consider handing him a jail term of up to 3.5 years. Joy Dugid, NTD News.
Hong Kong residents can now apply for a new visa to become British citizens. A migration expert reveals that applications have increased by 30 to 50%. NTD's Trevor Piper has more.
An expert says the new migration route is much easier for Hong Kongers as they don't need to invest at least £2 million or start a business in the UK.
Since the launch of the BNO visa, our inquiry for the UK migration has about increased at least 30 to 50%.
The new visa route comes after Beijing imposed a national security law on the Asian financial hub last year. The route allows those with British National Overseas or BNO status to live, study and work in the UK for 5 years, then settle here. Opinions on the streets are mixed regarding the opportunity to become British citizens.
I think, comparatively, it's still better than Hong Kong. For example, for young people like us, we don't know how to live or survive here, so I would consider this method.
I truly understand the saying, people are worth less when they leave their home country. If they want to move to a foreign country and think the UK is safer than Hong Kong amid a pandemic, that's their own decision.
The UK government estimates up to 154,000 BNO status holders and their dependents will come in the first year. Beijing and Hong Kong say they will no longer recognise the BNO passport as a valid travel document, but Hong Kong residents can still use their Hong Kong passports to leave and enter the region. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
Facial recognition technology is gaining ground in France's police force, but it has some people and institutions worried. Our France correspondent David Vivers met with an expert who says the situation could soon resemble that in China.
Demonstrators remained on the streets of Paris as darkness fell on January 30th. The city saw yet another day of protests on Saturday, voicing opposition to a controversial security bill. If passed, the law would give security forces more access to surveillance tools, like drones and facial recognition software.
It is like a sci-fi movie. You're going to airport, a machine scans your face and can confirm your passport. This technology was tested 1 year ago by a French company in Kazakhstan. The company is linked with the Minister of the Interior.
Virag says the pandemic paved the way for French authorities to set up their surveillance measures. Virus contact tracing was already in place, but more technology might extend how people are tracked. Virag refers to a book called The Great Reset, written by Klaus Schwab and Thierry Malret. Klaus Schwab is executive chairman of the Davos Economic Forum. His book proposes new theory on what Western countries should be like after the pandemic is under control. He suggests total surveillance of the population for what Schwab calls their own safety.
It's not about tracking you for 1 day or 1 week. It's about how to track you all the time, everywhere. In his book, Klaus Schwab says Western countries should copy China and track people in their daily lives, when they're on the streets, etc. We're totally in George Orwell's 1984. Saying, in the name of people's protection, they should be constantly monitored.
China already operates a vast surveillance network, with about 20 million cameras installed across the country. Chinese tech companies also dominate the global facial recognition market. Telecom giant Huawei has already equipped 200 cities across the globe with this kind of technology. In France, facial recognition software was used by police, even when it went against EU law. But in November 2020, the State Council approved its use, meaning it will likely be part of new police surveillance tools. Reporting by David Vives, NTD News.
Concerns over theft of intellectual property may stop thousands of Chinese academics and researchers from being allowed to enter the UK. According to the Times newspaper, the measures come amid growing concerns about Chinese students, academics and researchers acquiring technology that could benefit China's army. The Foreign Office will introduce security vetting in 44 areas relating to national security. These include artificial intelligence, chemistry, physics, maths and computer science. For those who already are working or studying in the UK, their visas might be revoked if they are deemed a risk. Visa applicants will have to disclose extensive background information and details of their proposed research area. Italians are renowned for their love of coffee bars. Now that COVID-19 restrictions are eased, people can enjoy their morning caffeine. Eddie Aitken has more.
Parts of Italy have lifted their restrictions. Cafes can serve morning coffees and restaurants can serve sit-down meals till 6 p.m. This lady tells of her delight at the cafe's reopening.
I feel much more alive because we felt dead without bars.
Italians like to catch up, reminisce and socialise over their drink of choice. She added,
It is beautiful to come here and talk to the people behind the bar. They make us feel alive every morning before going to work.
Despite being allowed to reopen, bars in the centre of Rome say functioning without tourism made life impossible. Italy's health minister announced the easing of COVID-19 restrictions last week as the number of people infected consistently fell. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
Sunday morning, Parisians saw about 700 vintage and classic vehicles during the 21st Winter Paris crossing. Buses, motorbikes, cars and even tractors made their way proudly along the beautiful streets. The 20-kilometre route takes the annual motorcade past many famous Parisian landmarks. Sitting next to his dad in their Jeep, this student expresses his delight.
It's just this, living in the moment, breathing fresh air, driving down the world's most beautiful avenue in an old car. That's enough for me.
The participants gave up their usual group gatherings in order to observe social distancing measures, but they're still being allowed to stop along the itinerary. That's all for today from NTD TV UK News. See you tomorrow.